moms, welcome back to my channel. When you see this video, I will be 30 weeks pregnant with my second baby. If you're new to my channel, I post 4 videos every single week on babies, pregnancy, toddler and motherhood. I also have a 15-month-old son, Hunter. Today I'm going to be filming a simple baby registry, so must-haves that you will need for your newborn, and also talk about a couple of things that are non-essential. If you're trying to conceive, expecting a new baby, or you have a new baby, then I hope you stick around and watch this video. Like I said, this is our second baby, so a lot of these items I already kept from my son, but I wanted to talk to you guys about some of the things that I think are essential and some of the items that I also think are not that essential or are a bit of a waste of money. When it comes to buying baby items as a first-time mum, you'll notice that when you go to look at baby registry lists online at a baby store, they will have about 300 items in there, and most of them you won't need. It's just that it's going to make them some extra money. Hopefully this will save you a little bit of money as well to kind of help you avoid buying anything unnecessary, or at least let you know which items are worth waiting until after the baby is born to purchase. I've separated this registry into 3 different sections. So I have one on the nursery, I have another on bathing and changing, and then another one which is just miscellaneous. I'm not going to cover anything on breastfeeding or bottle feeding must-haves in this video because I have actually filmed a separate video all about that. For the nursery, I have 7 items, which doesn't sound like a lot, but realistically this is all you're going to need in your nursery. So I have got a comfy chair. This doesn't need to be a rocking chair like what I'm sitting in now, and it doesn't need to be in your nursery, but it is really helpful to have a comfy chair that you can feed baby in. But also as they get older, it's nice to have a chair that you can sit in and read books to them. And I just found that this was really helpful when I had a C-section, to have a chair that I could sit in to feed, that I was comfortable, because it was quite uncomfortable to breastfeed in those early stages when I had an incision and I needed to put bub on top of a cushion. I did have a nursing pillow, but to be honest, I think I would just use a normal cushion these days. It didn't realistically do anything any different, and whenever I left the house, which was quite a lot of the time, I couldn't take that pillow with me, so it became a bit of a waste of money. Something else that you're obviously going to need is a change mat. I did not need a change table. I borrowed one at about 6 months old, and let me be honest, by the time Hunter had started rolling and trying to crawl, he did not want to use it. Before that, I would just change Hunter on the bed. I'd put the change mat on the bed, or I'd put it on top of a sturdy table, or even on the floor, and I found that that worked perfectly fine. Even now, as he's getting older, I don't necessarily want to lift him onto a change table, even though he's going to try and roll off and get off anyway. I just change him on the floor or the bed still. In those early stages, you are still going to be doing overnight changes, and while you have a newborn, I highly recommend having a bin in their room overnight. This is just so that you can throw those nappies into there, and then in the morning you can empty them all out and get rid of them. Once they're older and you're not doing overnight changes, you don't need to have this in there. But you really don't need to buy one of those fancy bins that cost like $200 and bag it for you. Honestly, just buy the $1.50 packet of nappy bags and a cheap $5 Kmart bin. That'll do you for overnight, and it stops everything from smelling, and you can just get rid of it. And then when I was still using disposables during the day, I would just throw that bin into the kitchen. It had a lid on it. It stopped my other bin from smelling. Now that Hunter's in cloth, I don't need a separate bin, but it was really handy those first couple of months to have one for overnight changes in his room. You're obviously going to need somewhere for baby to sleep, so a bassinet or a cot is really helpful. I have a video coming out all about SIDS awareness, which is sudden infant death syndrome, and how you should make sure that your mattress in those always are a firm mattress and that they're well fitted, and the different types of things that you should avoid putting in your cot. It's really important to have one of those. If you are someone who is having a C-section and you have the room, I highly recommend one of those bassinets with drop-down sides that you can pull up right next to the bed. That way you don't have to sit up and down a million times to pick them up. But otherwise, if you just only want to have a cot and you don't want to buy a bassinet as a double up, that's fine too. I found that Hunter was only in his bassinet for literally like 6 weeks, if that. So personally, aside from the C-section part, wasn't really worth having a second item. I actually bought that secondhand, and I'm glad I did, because it wasn't worth buying brand new when it didn't really last that long. For a newborn, you're not going to need a cot doona or anything like that. You're not going to need cot skirts. You're not going to need bumpers. They are literally going to be sleeping pretty still at that first part, and cot bumpers are actually not SIDS approved. They are a SIDS risk, so it's highly recommended not to buy those. And cot skirts, honestly, does the baby really care if you've got a cot skirt around the bottom or if it's got a really pretty cushion? I don't think so. So you just want to make sure that you have a nice fitted sheet, a mattress protector underneath, because at the beginning I found that Hunter had a lot of leaks and explosions until we found the right nappy for him, and I was constantly changing sheets. If you've got a spewy baby, you're going to be doing the exact same. So highly recommend making sure you've got a mattress protector. Depending on your preferences, you may choose to swaddle them, or you may choose to have one of those sleep suits. First 4 to 6 weeks, we use things like bunny rugs, which is just a really large square blanket, and we would swaddle Hunter in that. And then after that, we changed him into a sleeping bag, which had open arm holes so that he could still push himself around if he needed to, or if he rolled and was facing the side of the cot, he could still push himself away. There are 3 other things that I think are non-essential when it comes to a nursery. The first is one of those really fancy rocking bassinets. Your baby honestly just needs a safe sleep space. Some babies may like these, but it's the same deal as buying things like swings. I loved the swing, Hunter loved the swing, but there are plenty of babies who don't love it, and it could be a really expensive purchase that they end up not even using. So if you're wanting to invest in something like that, I'd recommend waiting until the baby is born and then actually trying them in that, and just starting off with something simple. White noise machines are not worth investing in before you have the baby. Even though white noise is something quite natural to them inside the womb, Hunter actually really hated it, and he found that it kept him awake and it was like too much for him. And white noise is actually really loud if you ever listen to it. So perhaps instead of buying that before they're born, go onto YouTube, try and play it once they're born, see if they like it. If it works, then buy a machine, but otherwise it's not something that I would put as an essential for before they are born. The last thing that I think is a non-essential is a cot mobile. They're going to be looking at things during the day when they're awake. At night time, they really shouldn't be stimulated by any toys. They should just be focusing on going to sleep. I also worried about if they fell down and smothered the baby. That kind of worried me a little bit. I didn't like the idea of things hanging over Hunter's head. But if you are wanting something like a cot mobile, it's probably more recommended to throw it over the top of a change table or something like that to keep them distracted during a nappy change when they are awake, and it's appropriate for them to actually be looking at toys. Moving on to items for bathing and changing, I obviously have some towels and face washes, and I found that the best were to buy the bamboo ones. They were the softest. Babies have really delicate skin, and so it wasn't worth buying really cheap ones. Even though you go through a million face washes when they are little and bathing, and if they spew or anything like that, I found that it was still worth having some good quality ones for bath time, and then I could have the cheapies for anything else. You're going to need a baby bath and an insert. At that age, you really do need an insert for them to be able to comfortably be in there, and it makes it so much easier to bath them. You don't need anything really expensive. You can literally buy an insert for like $10 from Kmart, and I think the baths are about the same, $10 or $15. Nothing fancy. You don't need to be able to weigh them in them, because you can take them to a health clinic or a doctor's clinic and get them weighed for free anyway. You're obviously going to need some wipes, but you want to make sure that they are fragrance free. You don't know what kind of allergies your baby is going to have, and so you want to make sure that they are just plain normal water wipes or fragrance free wipes, and stock up on about 1 million of these because you're going to need a lot of them. I found that the Cub brand by Coles, I buy a $10 box and it has 6 different packets in it. I think as a newborn stage, we were going through like a pack of wipes a week. So you gauge off that, but remember that you still need one in your baby bag. Buy up a lot. You'll get through them. You're not going to need a wipes warmer. And to be honest, I don't even know why people buy these. Sounds like a bit of a convenience thing, but my son has never had a wipes warmer. He's always had a cold wipe. We now live in the cold and he still doesn't have an issue with it. I think that they are just a bit of a waste of money. And when you leave the house, you're not going to be able to take your wipes warmer with you. And when you're at home, I found it so much more easy to have a basket that I could transport around the house and change wherever I wanted. I really wouldn't like it if I was confined to one space to change a nappy, especially if there was an explosion, because I don't want to have to drag a explosion baby like across the other side of the house and potentially have an even bigger mess just for the sake of a wipe warmer. Something I forgot to mention with the baby bath is that you don't necessarily need to buy one on a stand. Once they're getting older, they're getting too big and heavy to get in there anyway, but also they're going to want to try and jump out, which is really dangerous. And I found that honestly I would just bath him on the top of a kitchen table for the first couple of months anyway, which made it easier with my C-section rather than bending down. But now I just throw it in the bottom of the shower, or I even would throw it in a bath and just do it like normal. So I don't really think that those stands are really necessary unless you're going to buy one cheap and secondhand. Something else that you're going to need to stock up on is some hand sanitizer. In those early days, people are constantly forgetting to wash their hands before they hold baby. It's really helpful to have one when you're in public, if you are touching things like elevator buttons or anything like that, but also just when you're at a friend's house, just so that you can kind of go, hey, like, have some hand sanitizer and then I'll pass you the baby. Nappies are obviously another thing that you're going to need, but this comes down to personal preference as to what you buy. When it comes to buying nappies, make sure that you keep the receipts, because you don't want to open all the boxes. If for whatever reason your child goes up a size and you still have some newborn nappies left in their boxes with the receipts, you can take it in and get it exchanged for a bigger size, and this way you're not wasting anything. Nappy bags are really handy at home if you've got disposals, but also when you're out. They're really cheap. You can buy like a $1.50 packet at Coles and get like 50 bags, so there's something that's really handy. Pseudo cream is another must-have, and it's much better than using anything like baby powder. A lot of you probably won't know as first-time mums, but babies who inhale too much baby powder can actually clog their lungs, and so it can actually be quite dangerous for them. So pseudo cream is one of the best things to use for nappy rashes, dry skin, or anything like that. So even if you're still using cloth nappies, I found that it was helpful with Hunter's teething rashes, or if he got the baby acne in the early days. But you can still use breast milk if you want to use that as an alternative. A thermometer and some nail clippers are really helpful as well. Babies' nails grow really fast, and a thermometer obviously you're going to need in case they spike a temperature, because it's really hard to tell just using your hand if they've got a temperature or not. You're not going to need anything like baby nail files or anything like that. Honestly, it's hard enough cutting the nails alone, let alone trying to file them perfectly. On to my last section now, and this is a bit of a miscellaneous section just because there are a lot of bits and bobs and random things. So I have the pram and the car seat. These are pretty essential. You probably could get away without a pram if you really wanted to, but I found it really handy when I was out that Hunter had something else to sleep in if I was at a restaurant or something like that. And it also kept my hands free if I wanted to go to the shops. I have done a pram review on both my single and double, which are the Velcro baby prams, if you would like to check those out. As for a car seat, this is probably one of the most essential items that you're going to need. You can't leave the hospital without having something to actually strap your child into. It's really important that you research into a really good quality car seat. You never know if you're going to be in a car accident or not, so this is probably one of the items that you need to spend the most amount of money on compared to other items, because it is their safety at hand when it comes to this. I am going to leave a link down below to a lot of these items that I recommend so that you can see exactly what brand I've used. Baby carrier is something that I found an essential for me. It may not be an essential for you, but I highly recommend waiting until baby is actually born to decide on what works best for you. Those wraps that you have to tie up yourself were a nightmare, and I absolutely hated them, but I can see why others would love them because you can hold them so close. Personally, unless I had someone to stand there and wrap it for me every single day, I found them a bit of a waste of time, and it didn't really feel that secure. I much more preferred my Baby Bjorn carrier that we still use even now with Hunter, and it was about $100, but I used it so much when he was younger. He could fall asleep in it. I could have both hands. I could do housework. I could cook. I could do so much when he was younger, and even now sometimes it's just handy instead of taking the pram. Some babies may not like a carrier, so I don't recommend buying that before they are born though. A baby swing is another thing that I absolutely loved with Hunter, and he loved. And again, I could put him down and have my hands free. I could do some housework and stuff like that, but not all kids like that. So again, I would wait until after they're born, take them into the shop, see if they even like sitting in one, or if you have a friend, see if you can borrow it for a couple of days and see if they even like it. Hunter didn't like the music on ours, but he really loved the fact that it swung him back and forth. Don't really see the point in the ones where you sit and have to bounce them the whole time, because for me personally the idea is that I have my hands free and I can do stuff while he's in it. A baby bag and a travel change mat is something that I have found a really big essential. I found that the travel change mats just help so much with being out in public, because I don't like putting him down on a normal change table. You never know if someone's cleaned it off properly or what's been on it. And I also just found that it meant that other surfaces where I may say be in a park or something like that, I could still change him and it didn't have to be a completely flat, even surface. The baby bag, obviously a little bit self-explanatory. I needed to use it to bring nappies and stuff with me. A play mat, when they're younger, they really need to do some tummy time, so I found that that was really helpful. If you're someone who does not have really soft floors or carpet, you're probably going to need one of these so that they can roll around on the floor, play, but also just so that they have somewhere soft to practice tummy time. It's not really recommended to do all your tummy time on things like a bed, just because the mattress on yours is so soft, and they still need to be able to have a little bit of a firm base to be able to grip onto and push themselves up to practice that head strength. A window shade on the car is something that has been an absolute must-have. We drove from Queensland all the way through to Tasmania when my son was 6 months old to move state, and I don't even know how we would have survived that trip without one of those, because even on a normal day it is so bright outside for them that they're not going to sleep if they've got the sun right in their eyes. So they're only a couple of dollars, but they're really worth investing in. Something that is important for a newborn's development is to have some books and also some colourful toys for them to look at. So the first little bit they're only going to be able to see in things like black and white, and then as they get a little bit older they start to learn how to focus on things and tell the difference between colours. And that's why you'll often see there's lots of newborn baby toys that have lots of random colours on them, and they don't really look that appealing to you or like they match or anything. They're going to have weird patterns, kind of like one of these. They, like I said, they're not anything aesthetically pleasing, but for them it is really helpful for their eye coordination and to focus on things. For us, a dummy and a dummy chain was really important. Some people don't like to give their children dummies. The dummy chains are actually made myself, and it just meant that the dummy couldn't fall on the floor, so I didn't have to sterilize them all the time. They're not expensive. Having a couple of tablets of Milton and just a cheap takeaway container can be really important. I found that this was really good for sterilizing teethers or toys or anything for the first couple of months when Hunter was really young, just to try and keep everything sanitary. And obviously you can throw in dummies and bottles and anything else like that in there with it as well. I found having a car mirror a bit of an essential. Hunter used to choke randomly and have lots of issues with his breathing, and we couldn't always hear him, so I found that that was something that was really helpful. Even now, when I have to drive the highway, it stops me from having to pull over if he's just done something silly like dropped his dummy or something. I found that that really helped, and I could see if he was asleep or anything like that as well. A baby monitor is not necessarily the most essential thing at the very beginning unless they're sleeping in their own room, because I did find as a first time mum I would have Hunter sleep in the lounge room with me, but now that I'm going to have 2 under 2, obviously baby is going to have to nap in their room of a daytime so that the toddler doesn't wake them. But I found that a monitor is really helpful. Avoid anything that needs Wi-Fi, because long story short, but I used to live in a house where next door neighbours had a monitor that ran off Wi-Fi, and it showed up on our security camera screen. I could see their child in a cot, and it's not the first time I've heard of this happening. It happened by some freak accident that I could see this, so imagine if someone else was able to hook into your Wi-Fi and have a look at it. I just find that a little bit creepy. Something I've found really helpful on my pram from day one is a pram caddy and a hook. The pram caddy, I can throw a drink bottle in, I can throw baby's bottle in, I can throw my phone in, my wallet. I don't have to access the underneath basket, which means I don't have to take my eyes off baby when I'm at the shops. And the pram hook I used to hang some shopping bags off it as well, for the same thing if I filled up my basket or I just didn't want to reach down there. A couple of non-essential items I found was to buy burp cloths. I don't really think it's necessary to spend a lot of money on burp cloths, because honestly at the end of the day you can use a face washer, a towel, you can use a blanket. There's so many other things that you can use before you need to have a dedicated thing. It's just another item to throw in the wash, and it's just more money, but it's something else that you're not going to repurpose. So I know a lot of people sometimes buy terry toweling and just use that, but for us, I mean, Hunter wasn't really a spewy baby, but I would just always keep extra face washers in my baby bag, and that seemed to do enough for me. Breastfeeding covers, waste of time and money, honestly. When Hunter was first born, I would need to be able to hold his head, support my boob to be able to get him to latch, and I didn't have hands to hold my top, let alone a breastfeeding cover, to be able to see past it, see if he was latching properly. They would fall off. I couldn't hold him and adjust it at the same time. They're a pain in the bum. Honestly, they bring more attention to you than just feeding your child in general, and most people really shouldn't be even looking at what you're doing anyway. So to me, personally, you should just be able to feed them, no different to if you're giving them a bottle or anything like that. And I just don't feel like they were worth the extra money. You can throw a blanket over if you're really nervous. First couple of months, I didn't want to feed in front of everyone, so I would feed in the car or feed at home away from people or express and give them a bottle. But these days I don't really care about it. I'm just like, my child's hungry, that's what's happening. But I do understand that some people are getting quite nervous, but in all honesty, I find that it's a lot more noticeable if you are bringing attention to yourself by having the blanket on, because they can tell what you're doing. Whereas if you've just got this down like the tiniest bit and they're feeding, honestly, no one's seeing anything anyway, and if they are, they're looking too hard. Two more things on my list of non-essential items. I know I wasn't going to talk about any bottle things, and I have got another video on this, but a formula machine. You do not need to spend $300 on a machine that makes up your formula for you like a coffee machine. Honestly, it's not that hard to make up a bottle, and $300 could go so much further with other things for your child. I just don't really think that it's necessary. The last thing on this list that I don't think is an essential item is a capsule. In theory, they look great. You can get your child out of the car without having to worry about transfers, and they go in and out and whatever. You can put them in their car seat before they go in the car. But honestly, I found them so ridiculously heavy. If you have a C-section, you're not really going to be able to carry them for a while anyway. And you're not supposed to be carrying anything heavier than your baby. So you're going to have to take them out of the capsule anyway, unless someone's with you 24/7 to grab the capsule out. They are not the most safest thing for children to be in for long periods of time compared to a normal car seat, because they do arch their back a lot more. And there are a lot more issues and risks of them choking with it because of this. They're also not necessarily going to last them a significant amount of time unless they're a preemie or tiny baby. Usually by 6 months old, most children are out of them. Unless you have a heap of extra money, I just stick to a normal rear-facing car seat because they're just a little bit of a gimmick to me personally. That's it for my simple newborn registry. I hope this helped you out in deciding what you need for your baby. And if there's anything that you would like help on, feel free to ask me in the comments down below. If there's anything that you thought was an essential item that is not clothing or feeding related, feel free to comment it below. But anything that's going to be feeding or clothing related will be in some future videos. So I hope you stick around and click subscribe so that you will be notified when those come out. Don't forget to hit the bell. That's what sends you the notifications. I'll see you in the next video.